Welcome, everyone. My name is Dr. April Jasper, and I'm excited to be here with Dr. Rixon so we can talk about a new innovative technology that Reichert has come out with. So I won't tell you about that yet, but first I want Dr. Rixon to tell us a little bit about himself and where you're working, Dr. Rixon, and more about what you do every day.
Yeah, thanks, April. My name is Drew Rixon. I'm currently full-time at the Memphis VA, where I'm the residency coordinator and an attending optometrist. I also do some consulting work over at Southern College of Optometry. Prior to that, I was in private practice for 10 years in a large multi-specialty practice. So I've kind of a background all around in a lot of different practice modalities. I just finished my glaucoma diplomate program through American Academy of Optometry.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. It was a 5-year program teaching me how little I knew, which is awesome. I mean, it was really good to expand horizons and constantly, I guess, beaten down a little bit, but it gives you constant recognition of how to strive for more info. Honestly, in clinic on a daily basis, I'm in Memphis. So it's about 70% African-American, and we have just a ton of glaucoma. We're really overrun. So it's pretty much what I do on the daily basis.
Awesome. Well, you're perfect then to talk about this new innovative technology. But before we get started, I want to make sure I invite all of you to share your name and your practice name in the comments bar on Facebook and YouTube, and then send in any questions that you have. You're going to hear a lot of interesting stuff from Dr. Rixon, and some of it I may not think of the best questions to ask, and I want you to just type them in, tell us what you're interested in so that we can answer your questions as well. So we kind of hinted at what our topic is today, but let me kind of give you a little bit more information. We know a lot about Goldmann tonometry. I mean, when we went to school, Dr. Rixon and I were taught that way. It's still considered the gold standard for IOP measurement, but it is not without its challenges. So today I want to discuss with Dr. Rixon Reichert's new modern patented prism design for Goldmann tonometry. So let's start first by Dr. Rixon. Tell us, we know that, again, Goldmann tonometry is considered the gold standard, but what have we learned about its accuracy in recent years?
Yeah, it's a great segue into just the conversation on gold standard, which I'm going to attack for a little bit, because I think what happens with gold standard is like constantly when you and I came through school, they talk about tonometry and it's this gold standard, this kind of constant theme. And I think it breeds a lot of complacency, but then there's also like this reverence where it's like, oh, it's Goldmann, it's perfect, and it's inerrant. And this is not reality. And I think, when we look at standards too, you look at, like, there is a standard and there's the standard bearer that is, we're calling it gold, but is Goldmann actually worth gold? Is it actually meet the standard?
Right.
And then standards are constantly evolving. So it's like, 20 years from now, maybe like the Bitcoin standard or something like that. So I just think kind of like that's the first notion, is that I think it takes us away from innovation. I think it just makes us comfortable because it's like perfect. It really is. I think with Oates came out in like the early 2000s, the ocular hypertension treatment study. I think that really shined a lot of light on central corneal thickness. But I think this is part of the process in the diplomate program, was like, whoa, all this stuff I think I knew or I just found out about has been known for like 70 years. So Goldmann himself knew that there were flaws in his prism, and he even published on those flaws, and they developed nomograms, and they did studies where they were able to control intraocular pressure, and they found that across all pressure readings, their prism really wasn't that good. So I think part of it was just, disseminating out to the masses. I think that's where Oates really took on. And I think people got really interested, and I think there was kind of like a renaissance in tonometry that's occurred.
Wow, that's incredible. So if we talk about the positives about Goldmann tonometry, and I love how you pronounced it much better than me, but when is Goldmann tonometry most reliable?
That's, I'll be honest with you, I'm not even sure if it's pronounced Goldmann, and I definitely have zero German background. So I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I'm going to run with it for the purposes of today.
I love it.
So, the best thing I saw the other day, I was reading something, and they talked about, like, what Goldmann did was he standardized a tonometry for standard corneas. And it's like, what does that mean?
Right.
On a daily basis? It's like one of these like kind of esoteric sort of things out there. And it just kind of assumes that you have like the perfect cornea that's not too soft, it's not too rigid. The central corneal thickness is like this because they developed it essentially empirically for a certain cornea. And so it's like it meets that. I mean, really, Goldmann was a huge innovator for the time. And I feel like sometimes we start talking about new stuff and it's like an attack piece on Goldmann. It's like that's not what we're saying here. But we knew, or he knew, that it had to be essentially a perfect cornea. And we know that things are way muddier now that we have hysteresis and knowledge of central corneal thickness and tear film stuff.
So then I guess the next question would be, when is Goldmann tonometry least reliable and why? And you kind of gave us some hints of that, and it kind of sounds scary. I mean, I hear you and I think, wow, this gold standard, you're right, means to us sometimes that's the only way, but it also means to us it's the way we're comfortable. So now you need to take me out of my comfort zone. Tell me, when is Goldmann tonometry least reliable and why?
Yeah, the comfort thing is a great point. I say this to all my students and residents. I say, if you're not staying uncomfortable throughout your career, you're not driving hard enough.
Right.
And so, let's make you uncomfortable. So, when we think about the cornea, and just like you said, it gets kind of scary because what Dr. McCafferty, who's the proprietor of CATS, found was over 50% of corneas are not in that standard cornea range.
Wow.
And so, on a daily basis, when we're looking in clinic and we don't think about this stuff, we just assume it's correct. We're dealing with corneal dynamics, which are, rigidity, and you're talking about hysteresis, central corneal thickness, precorneal tear film. I mean, you do a lot of dry eye management. I think about the average consistency and quality and volume, especially in glaucoma patients, where we're throwing them on a preserved drop and mucking up their surface.
Right.
There's just a lot of noise that exists in over 50% of the corneas. And so I'd love to tell you, when is it bad? Well, I'm a Yankee and maybe I'm a little bit more cynical being a New England guy, but I would say most of the time. So instead of going in naively, it's probably better to expect that you're probably not getting something that is perfect. And
wow.
that may be a hack to that, but that's kind of how I approach things.
It's kind of like when I first heard the data, the statistic that 50% of patients diagnosed with glaucoma have what we used to consider normal IOPs.
Yeah.
I mean, this is craziness. Well, let's talk about this new innovative technology. You said it a couple of times, but what is the CATS Tonometer Prism?
Yeah, so I like to keep things very simple. And what I love about this is it's almost like a mission statement that's built out in the name, right? So you got CATS, it's correcting applanation, tonometry, surface. So if you break it down, it's like, this is exactly what this is doing. And I mean, I guess they could have done CATS maybe sounds better how they market it, but it just absolutely is intuitive for what it's attempting to do, and actually not what it's attempting to do, what it actually does. So it takes care of the errors that we've long known occur due to Goldmann based on the corneal surface.
And I don't think I had ever heard that was a thing. We heard about people leaning in, their necktie being too tight. We heard about positioning in the tonometer, when you do tonometry. I don't know that this is something that's widely understood. So tell us, why is the CATS Tonometer Prism innovative?
Yeah, I'm going to circle back to what you said about us not knowing stuff. And it's crazy throughout the process with learning stuff in the diplomate again. I found a paper on sources of error on Goldmann, 30-page paper about all these flaws in it. And it'll put you to sleep. I mean, I can send it to you if you want. But, this is from 1993. So we've known all this stuff, but we just sit there and we ding the cornea and we say it is this because, like you said before, it's that comfort. Yep. So what's been innovative is that first off, it's human innovation. So you have Dr. McCafferty, who had a mechanical engineering degree and then went on and got a master's in optical engineering, and there's also an MD ophthalmologist. So you have this kind of intersection here where you have the right person come along at the right time with technology. So what they did was they knew there were flaws to Goldmann. He understood those flaws, And then the technology was there for them to develop it. So they did some math. And I looked this up, believe it or not. They did some mathematical equation to try to shape the cornea. And that mathematical equation, the first time I saw it was like in 93. So Goldmann didn't have access to that. So then the technology comes along. So then they modeled the cornea more appropriately, and they improved upon what Goldmann had already done. So they essentially modeled the cornea, and they found that you need to have a concave center. And I'll just say, everybody that's listening, you can go on the CATS website. I think you just type in CATS to Google and it'll show up. And then you can actually look at the prism. The prism has a central concavity. And the purpose of that is to go ahead and create less mechanical stress in the interaction with the cornea. And then on the flange or the annulus, they have this convex thing that takes away the tear film. Which is awesome, in your dry eye patients and stuff like that. So the innovation was essentially they took something that was already really good and gold standard, and they just made it better. And what they first did was they did their prototype against Goldmann to make sure there'd be alignment in normal corneas, right. And then they attacked the individual sources of error, and they've been able to do a really good job minimizing those. So the innovation comes from right person, right time, and challenging the status quo. And it's,
wow. Yeah. So I did go on the website. That's a great idea. Good tip for everybody to be able to see the difference. It's sometimes we talk about it, but seeing it really helps to understand. And it also helps, I think, with what my next question is for you. And that is, how easy is this to implement into practice? Does it mean I have to get a whole new slit lamp? Does it mean that I need some new machine? Tell me more about implementation.
Yeah. So, any tonometer that you want to use or decide to do has to have precision, accuracy, cost, and convenience. This is the same exact cost as Goldmann tips. And it fits onto the same, probe handle or arm. So literally it's like you take your Goldmann tip, throw it in the garbage. Now, granted, I'm not getting paid for this, so I have no, Reichert's not paying me. I'm just telling you, chuck your Goldmann out, get your CATS, pop it in there. It doesn't need to be calibrated or anything. So very easy to slide that thing in there, and it doesn't really change your routine. What is different about it is that, and it's a humbling thing for me, so when you first start using it, it really requires good centration. So Reichert will use the term like self-centration, which is just a marketed term that's polite for us doctors to say, do a better job. So what you need to do is essentially the Myers will be absolutely askew if you aren't on that dead center 3 millimeters. And so you just adjust it. I mean, it probably took me 5 to 10 patients before I was comfortable. And to me, that's awesome because it gives me feedback. I always say I want to change. Maybe it's kicking and screaming, but this drags you into doing it more accurately. So it's easy, in my opinion. It hasn't been much of a difficulty. It hasn't changed workflow. Just slide it in, you're done. And I think that's what was so awesome about this was it was just like we're getting this seamlessly in there. And it's just clever. It's a common sense approach that he took to actually delivering this. Because back in the day, we had that DCT, and it was just so cumbersome. It'd take like 4 minutes, and you'd hear that sign. This is easy. We're used to it.
So what about those patients, though, Dr. Rixon, that you've been checking their pressures all along? They're your glaucoma patients you've been seeing pretty consistently. Are you finding that some of them, their pressures are higher or lower? And I'm assuming we trust this more if there is a difference. So tell us about a patient, maybe a personal experience that you've had with the CATS Tonometer Prism and really how this innovation and this innovative tonometer prism has helped positively impact your Goldmann tonometry routine.
Yeah, I think, again, it's trying to have that quest for true IOP, all these forces that are swirling around the optic nerve and having assurance that you're getting there. I think the data from the cadaveric eyes and even real live eyes and surgery show it is definitely more precise, not precise, but definitely more aligns with intraocular pressure. So I'll give you a couple of cases from clinic. So I had one yesterday with one of my residents. Said the highest IOP that had been recorded by Goldmann was 18, and she got 14 yesterday. And there was a Dransheim, and the nerve was fairly uneventful. But we said, okay, there's a Dransheim. I have to take that seriously. I also have a 30-page paper on Dransheims if you want it. And so it's not always glaucoma, but I think we have to at least rule that out. So we went ahead and did CATS, and the CATS was actually 18, which means that that 18 we recorded before was probably a 22 in reality.
Wow.
We have ORA, so we're able to look at the hysteresis. Hysteresis was 10. IOPCC was like 17. And so how does that impact care? It drives the conversation of, NTG, HCG, what's going on there, risk factors, just gives you better information, especially in a teaching facility, instead of just having them believe that X pressure is this. And if it's truly like a low tension glaucoma, I'm doing sleep apnea studies and I'm, going ahead and doing a 24-hour ambulatory or something like that. I'm completely changing how I'm going to operate. Obviously, we want more IOP data, but unfortunately, we still really tend to react sometimes emotionally to a number based on what we were taught. And so that could have gone in a completely different direction if we had labeled that as an NTG suspect, because again, the nerve wasn't anything that bad. And then another one we had was extern, and this is, I don't know if you work with students, but this was an extern that's an awesome extern. I wouldn't say I trust her with my life, but she's very good. And so, pressure she gets is 29 on Goldmann. We do IOPCC, it's 23. So we have that. Most people aren't going to have the RA in their office. CATS came out at 24. Central corneal thickness was like 600. And so, does that change what your overall risk assessment is in that snapshot of time? Yeah, I absolutely believe so. So we're going to approach that a lot differently than we would if it was a 29 or 30. There's still people that are lowering pressure in office when they see a 30, which is inane in an open angle situation, but it shows how much pressure has that hold over us.
Right. So has it made you, remember I started at the beginning saying we're all comfortable, or I'm comfortable with what I've been doing. Does it make you now uncomfortable with the old way?
Not necessarily. I think, a lot of my research and whatnot, I've always known that we weren't there with true intraocular pressure. So I'd always know that, hey, this is the reality. Glaucoma is way more complex than one IOP reading. And so I need to consider a whole lot of information before I put that in there. But it is the only modifiable risk factor. So no, it really hasn't affected anything as far as like, I don't think I was naive going in, but it's like, it just reinforces that, we aren't getting what we thought we were getting. But we shouldn't have been thinking we were getting what we thought we were getting, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, again, it goes back to the thing we didn't know was how much the cornea made a difference. I have an ocular response analyzer too, and I just keep trying to get whatever tools I need to do a better job of taking care of these glaucoma patients. So this is fabulous information, and I can't thank you enough for kind of breaking it down, making it understandable, and helping to bring us up to date with what's new and unique, honestly. So yes. Dr. Rixon, anything that you want to bring up? I asked you some questions that really came to mind, but is there anything I left out? Any additional, stories, patients that you can think of that would help to understand better how CATS Tonometer Prism can make a difference in practice?
I don't think there's anything that we didn't really hit on that really has to be brought up too much more, aside from just that there's been a lot of assumptions over the years about how Goldmann actually works, even though he said it wasn't going to work on all these things. I just look at this as being like a really, really common sense delivery mechanism that we're already used to. So going back to embracing change, but not really wanting to embrace change.
Right.
You don't really have to embrace much change here. I think this goes in very, very seamlessly. And that's what's so ingenious about it. It just works very easily for us, and we're not forced to adapt. So we can kind of act like we got outside of our comfort zone, but we really didn't have to.
I love it. Thank you, Dr. Rixon, for sharing your experience with us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jasper. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. And thank you to all of you for listening in. And for more information about the CATS Tonometer Prism, please contact the Reichert team.